It's summer and time for fresh air and breezy clothing, and today's sew-along features the epitome of summer dressing. I'm partnering with Violet Field Thread Sewing Patterns to share this June Misses dress. There are a few views offered for this pattern, allowing you to choose your length, the width of the open back, and the pocket inclusion. You can also choose to add shirring in the back bodice or go with a full back invisible zipper. This dress pattern is also available in children's sizes, the same silhouette, perfect for sweet matchy creations. I love the full gathered skirt of this dress and the statement pockets with their faux piping. Lovely little details included here. I hope you join me for this seasonal statement sewing project. Let's get started. Here is the wrong side of my front bodice piece, and I'm going to pin my darts. Then I can sew the darts from the outside to the point, leaving thread tails at the point so I can tie them in knots. Then I'll press my darts downward. And repeat to create your darts in your front lining piece as well. For the back straps, fold your pieces right sides together and pin one long edge and one short edge. Sew the pinned edges for both pieces with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Trim the seams and corners. Then we'll turn our ties right side out. You can use a turning tool to push that closed end toward the outside. Then give both ties a good press. Place the front and back bodice pieces right sides together along the shoulders and pin in place. Repeat for your lining front and back bodice pieces. Sew each shoulder seam at 1/2 inch and press the seams open. Here are the right sides of my back bodice pieces and the short inner edges. I'm going to place the raw unsewn short edges of the tie right sides together with these center back edges, centering them in place. And pin. Then I'll baste those short edges of the tie in place with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Place the bodice main and lining right sides together. I'll move my tie pieces to the inside so that they're out of the way of the pinning of the armholes. And I'll start with pinning the armholes. Then we'll pin the neckline. Continue pinning down the neckline and down the center backs, stopping your pinning 7 inches from the bottom of the back bodice. Then we'll sew starting from those back bodice edges, remembering to backstitch to secure, and sew up and around the neckline, as well as sewing those armholes with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then we can trim the seams and clip the curves of the sewn portions only. Then we can turn our bodice right side out and give it a good press. Then for those unsewn center back portions, we're going to flip the lining out of the way so so that we can press back the seam allowances of the main fabric by 1/2 inch, and then repeat for the lining fabric as well. Fold your elastic panel piece lengthwise wrong sides together and give that a press. Starting from the top fold, I'm going to mark a line 3/4 inch straight across. Then from the bottom raw edge, I'm going to mark another horizontal line 1/2 inch away from the raw edge. Then I'll mark another horizontal line 3/4 inch above the line I just drew. These 3/4 inch sections at the bottom and top are the casings for the elastic. In between those casings, mark another set of lines 3/4 inch wide, which will be the center casing. Then we'll sew right on top of each line, sewing both layers together. I've cut my 3 lengths of elastic according to the pattern instructions. I'm going to attach a safety pin to one short end for each piece. And I'll use the safety pin to lace the elastic through each of my 3 casings. Once the opposite raw edge of the elastic meets the raw edge of the panel, I'll pin in place. Then I'll quickly baste each of those edges to hold them in place. Now that those edges are secured, I can continue pulling that safety pin out the opposite end and pin those elastics in place. Then baste the opposite edge of the panel and the elastics in place. Now we're going to attach the elastic panel to the back bodice piece. I'm going to fold the linings out of the way with the folded edge of the elastic panel facing upward. I'm going to place one of my raw edges right sides together with the raw edge of the main piece, temporarily bringing out that previously folded seam allowance, so that the side raw edges are aligned as well as the bottom raw edges, pin in place along the center back. Sew the panel in place on this side with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now I have one side of the panel secured and installed to the back bodice piece. We'll repeat the exact same process to secure the opposite side. Placing the opposite back bodice piece right sides together with the opposite raw edge of the panel, aligning the side and bottom raw edges and pin in place. Sew the panel to the back bodice with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So here is my elastic panel from the right side of the garment and on the inside. Now to finish these inner seams, I'm going to place the main and lining fabrics right sides together along this portion that we did not sew earlier. Twisting that lining down so that the raw edges meet for the corresponding main and lining pieces. And I'll pin together that unsewn portion. Sew this section with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, starting where you stopped your previous lining stitches, sewing all the way to the bottom raw edge. Now I have one side of the elasticated center back complete. Repeat the exact same steps to complete the opposite side. Placing the main and lining right sides together with the elasticated portion sandwiched in between. And pin that portion, then sew that previously unsewn portion together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now to sew the side seams for the front and back bodice pieces, place the front and back main pieces right sides together along the side seams. Pin together the main fabrics as well as the linings right sides together, aligning that armhole seam. So now that the side seams of the linings are pinned right sides together and the side seam of the main is pinned right sides together, repeat that process on the other side. Then we'll sew from the bottom of the front and back main pieces across the seam and down to the bottom of the front and back lining pieces, repeating on both sides with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then you can turn the bodice right side out and give everything a good press. Place your pocket main and pocket lining right sides together and pin the top and bottom edges. Sew the top and bottom edge with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Trim those seam allowances by about half. Then turn this pocket and lining right side out. I'm going to press the pocket piece so that the lining peeks over the top by about 1/4 inch. This will cause the main fabric to tuck under by 1/4 inch on the bottom edge. Here is my skirt side panel and I've marked the pocket placement from my pattern piece. I'm going to place the bottom of the pocket along that marking and pin in place. And I'll also pin the side edges to the raw edges of the skirt panel. I'll sew the bottom edge of the pocket in place and baste the side edges. Repeat to create both pocket side panels. Then place each of the pocket side panels right sides together with the center front skirt. And pin in place. Then we'll sew both of the side seams from top to bottom with a 1/2 inch seam allowance and finish the raw edges. I've pressed the seam allowances on both sides toward the center front panel. Now from the right side of the garment, I'm going to top stitch to sew that seam allowance down flat. Sewing on the front panel side about 1/8 inch away from the original seam line for both panel seams. Place the front and back skirt pieces right sides together and pin the side seams on both sides. Sew both side seams with a 1/2 inch seam allowance from top to bottom, finish the raw edges and press those seams toward the back on both sides. Here is the bottom raw edge of the skirt. To prepare the hem, I'm going to fold the raw edge to the wrong side by 1/4 inch all the way around, then once more by a 1/2 inch all the way around. Now that the bottom hem is pressed and prepared, I can take it to the sewing machine and edge stitch close to that upper inner fold all the way around to complete the hem. Here are the top edges of the skirt, and we're going to sew gathering stitches all the way around so that we can pull those gathers to fit the front bodice piece. I'm going to sew within the seam allowance all the way around so that the beginning and end of my gathering stitches are side by side, leaving tails of thread. Starting with my front skirt piece, I'll pull the gathering stitches so that it fits the front bodice piece from seam to seam. Then I'll place both layers of the bottom of the bodice right sides together with the top of the skirt and pin in place from side seam to side seam, distributing those gathers evenly. Now for the back section, the top of the back skirt that corresponds with the shirred portion of the center back will not need to have any gathers, as we'll be stretching the shirred portion to fit that flat section of the back skirt. So we'll just be gathering the portions of the back skirt that correspond with the sides of the back bodice and pin in place. Then we can pull that shirred portion to fit the center of the back skirt and pin in place. Now we're ready to sew the skirt to the bodice all the way around with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, then finish those raw edges together. And now the dress is complete. Thank you for watching this sew along. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future sewing tutorials, and I'll see you in the next video.